going to change your life. It's so simple, but it's the most solid and important foundation for anything in life. He told us to be the salt and the light. Take some time from scrolling, read your Bible for 5 minutes.
Hey guys, welcome to Take a Leap. This is a Gen Z focused podcast highlighting young people who are changing the world for the better through their faith. I'm Naftali Rodriguez.
And I'm Ocean Marshall. And each week we sit down with young leaders, creatives, and world changers who are living their faith out loud.
But first, Men on the Street. This episode we went around asking students what's something you overthink too much. So let's see what they said.
What's something you overthink too much?
Probably my dating life.
Any project that has to do with art.
Text messages.
My OChem homework.
Probably whether or not I'm working hard enough.
Now for today's guest, Daniel Richter. He's a Canadian Christian pop artist and worship leader.
Daniel recently switched his career trajectory to follow a deeper calling, creating music that reflects his faith and points others to Jesus. So something that I liked about the interview was how he mentioned how reading the Bible 5 minutes a day can literally change your life.
I think that's a good idea, yeah. I really liked when he talked about how we all need to find what our specific gifts are, because I thought that's something that we all should all know, and it's a good tool to have.
So sure. He mentioned that some of us are teachers, some of us are doctors, some of us are musicians, but we all have a gift. So this episode is about overcoming hardships, finding your passion, and of course, music. Let's get into it.
Would you rather be famous for something embarrassing or unknown for something amazing?
Unknown for something amazing. Yeah.
That's so valid. Yeah, I think I would say the same. What about you, Neff?
Probably the same thing. I feel like I don't need the whole world knowing something I did that's good, I guess. What about you, Ocean?
Yeah, no, I think that I just don't want to be known for something embarrassing. I don't think I could do that. That's especially with the internet today, everyone will know. So our first question we have for you is, when did you first realize that your faith and music were meant to work together in your life?
Yeah, well, about a year ago, I kind of decided to start being obedient to God where He was calling me in regards to my music career. I was in the mainstream top 40 industry for well over a decade, and so only about a year ago I switched over into the Christian music industry. And then also about 3 years ago I decided to start leading worship at my church. So it's only been a little while since I've realized that my faith and my music were meant to be together.
We were curious to see how that all played out. When did you realize you're oh, music's my thing? When did you realize God is my thing? We're curious to hear about that.
Well, music has always been my thing. Ever since I was a kid, I started taking piano lessons when I was 6, started singing in the church. I started taking music seriously as a career though after I graduated university. And I started a band back then. It was called 11 Past 1, and we had some pretty successful music here in Canada. So that's when I took it seriously. But then my faith, I've always been a Christian, I've always loved Jesus, raised in the church, and played on worship teams all my life, right? But I never really took it seriously until, like I said, about 3 years ago when I started leading worship. And with my, how I said I was in the secular industry, right? I only switched over just a year ago. Yeah. Kind of starting all over again. I was used to having some success and stuff, so it's been a journey, but I just want what God wants for me, So
Amazing.
Don't really care about the fame and success anymore. I just want Jesus to be famous, through my music.
Yeah.
So what does it mean to you to use your platform as a ministry rather than just a music career?
It means the world to me. It's one of the most important things for me. God gave me the gift of music with singing and playing piano and songwriting, and He calls us to use our giftings and abilities that He's given to us, right? So I don't want to really use them for the world anymore. I was using my gifts for the world and for my own gratification and kind of selfishly and for fame before, and now it's truly a ministry. It's not just a career. My music now ministers to people. It speaks to people, right? So that's really all I want. I just want my music to speak to people, to touch the hearts and lives of people and point them to Jesus, right?
Yeah. I love how you said that. You're framing it in a ministry way. I've never heard anyone say that because, well, first off, a lot of people are not making Christian music. So to them, it's just music. I think that's an interesting way to look at it. So thanks for saying that. We're curious to hear about like what are the biggest challenges of making and pursuing a music career. I had a SoundCloud phase in high school. None of my music hit crazy numbers, but we were curious to
It's
see how you
hard.
made it happen.
I mean, the biggest challenge is just honestly getting people to listen to your music. You know,
Mhm.
it's tough. Like, you can post all you want, you can try and use the right hashtags, and you can pay for social media marketing and to get your songs out there. You can, have some radio play, et cetera, et cetera. But when it all boils down to it, I've learned just to trust God because, when you put all the money and the time and effort into posting and doing all that stuff, sometimes it doesn't work. I've kind of learned how to just be content. If it doesn't work, that's fine. Like, I can try. I think God gave us different avenues and stuff to try and, do our own work here. But I just pray about it and I'm just like, you know what, God, whatever you want for my music, that's cool with me. So, I mean, the biggest challenge is always trying to get your music heard. I obviously still care. I want my music to be heard. But what I'm trying to say is like the ultimate goal is like, really in the end, should you really care that much? Like, if it just touches one person's heart and changes one person's mind about something that maybe God was trying to speak to them about, then it's totally worth it, right?
Mhm.
So,
So you mentioned before how like about a year ago you switched to Christian music. So I'm
mhm.
curious as to how you decided to make that switch and how you now stay grounded when the industry can be like performance based like we talked about.
It was an ongoing process. I think God was really just speaking to me for the longest time. Like, I had all this other music lined up that was ready to go, and I really wanted to put it out and stuff. And like, honestly, some of my favorite music, which, side note, I just rewrote it to be Christian and I just re-recorded it
Oh,
all. So
Oh,
now
that's cool.
I'm gonna put
awesome.
it out as a Christian music. But anyways, I had it all set up and I was ready to go and I was praying for some, like, I have an investor who puts some money into my music and stuff, right? So I was praying for a little bit more of a budget and I was like, God, what do you want from my music next? And I'm like, just put a stop to this, if I'm not supposed to release it. Because my heart, I kind of was like leaning towards like putting out Christian music, but I just really wanted to keep going with what I was doing. So anyways, the money was cut off and literally like the day after I prayed hard about it. So I'm like, okay, God, you're definitely speaking to me. It's time now to just fully make music for you. I mean, staying spiritually grounded is really just praying and reading the word. You gotta do that. It's truly just so simple, but it's the most solid and important foundation for anything in life. Not just staying grounded in the music industry, but for everything.
Hmm.
Like sometimes when I'm leading worship, I get in my head and I start thinking about too much about how I sound or how the band sounds or if I'm hitting the notes well enough and like the list goes on. But then I have to remind myself and ask God to help me to worship in spirit and in truth, right? Not thinking about the performance driven stuff, but just thinking about worshiping Him, right? So
Mhm.
you just stay spiritually grounded by praying, reading His Word, truly. And I only figured that out just like a few years ago. I didn't always have a good prayer life. It's just kind of started the last few years, like having kids, getting married. It's just become such an important part of my life. So yeah.
Wow. Well, that's so cool. I'm loving that you're so vulnerable about that too. It's like, it's honestly never too late to get invested into your spirituality.
That's right.
And I love that you're like, admitting that. And that's so cool. I think it's awesome that you're able to like perform. I only play music a little bit, but one thing is making it a hobby and one thing's making it a career and you have a family you support. So I bet
Yeah.
there's some drive and some motivation there. We're curious to hear if you have any moment or experience where you had a listener, tell you maybe about how your music impacted them, or a moment while making music you just felt like the love of God. Would you like to share a story about that?
I have people messaging me all the time actually about how my music has been touching their lives. I had somebody whose mother, well, was her grandmother biologically, but her mom, she never had a mom. I think she might have passed. So her grandma was her mom. Anyways, she passed away. And I remember just my last song, Dear God, that I released in September. she messaged me and she was like, "This is just getting me through this grieving time. Like, thank you so much. It's just amazing how God,
Mm.
uses my music and speaks to others." And so that's just one little example there. So it's amazing. Like that's literally all the whole reason why I'm doing this now, right? So when I have people tell me about it, it just encourages me more just to keep going.
Yeah, that's amazing. What are some ways that you think that young Christians today are approaching faith differently than other generations?
I do think that young Christians today have too many distractions. I think everybody does. It's not just young Christians. Like everybody is distracted, with their phones and everything that's going on in the world, but they just need to stay prayed up, reading their word instead of scrolling. Just like take some time from scrolling and read your Bible for 5 minutes. 5 minutes, 5 minutes a day. And I'm telling you, it's going to change your life because that's like the only way that not the only way God speaks to us, but it is the number one way that the Holy Spirit speaks to us is reading your word. And I've only started to learn that, like I said, the past few years. It's amazing.
I think it takes time to recognize that that process is
It
helpful with
does.
you.
Yeah,
And
yeah, it does.
once you do, it's like, wow, life is so much better. I feel like those many hard moments we often overlook. And I feel like I'm always humbled to feel like, oh, God has something beautifully planned for me. And whether it's, absolutely crazy and my life is going to crap, I feel like there's always an intention. There's always something I'm learning to learn or grow from. And so,
Hmm.
kind of like a little icebreaker question. This question is a fun one. I feel like I'm excited to answer it. But what's something you overthink too much?
Probably, am I sounding good enough? Like
Yeah,
when I'm on
that makes sense.
stage, I always
That makes
overthink
sense.
that. I think in life, though, I don't know if I'm really an overthinker.
That's a blessing.
Yeah, that's good.
I don't know. There's not much going on up here.
Oh, that's awesome.
I
Wow, I
don't know.
wish I had that. What about you, Ocean?
I think just like the random things. Like if I say something a little like weird, I'll be like, wait, was that too weird for these people, for this group of people? What
Yeah, yeah.
That's,
about you?
I've been doing like lots of stretches, and so I feel like I've been overthinking like my posture a lot. Like I don't want to feel like there's like a board behind my hoodie. So kind of keeping it natural. Thanks for answering that. I'm glad that you don't have a lot to overthink.
Yeah, that's good. You can answer this question about what advice you would give. So, how can young believers influence culture without compromising their beliefs?
Live like distinct, live with intention, not like to be distant. Like Jesus didn't tell us to hide from culture. In Matthew 5, I think it is, he told us to be the salt and the light, right? So the salt is in the food, but it doesn't become the food. And then light enters darkness, but it doesn't turn into dark, right? So like young Christians influence culture best when they just stay present in conversations, in schools, in their art, in their business, in social media, but refuse to adopt like the values that contradict Christ, I think. So like be distinct or yeah, like I said, live distinct, not distant, if that makes sense.
And as a songwriter, as a musician, we're curious to hear like your process of how you make music. How is your process in writing songs? Are you using people in your life as examples? We're curious to
Oh
see
yeah.
how you do that.
Yeah, like all of my music is 100% so personal, like
Hmm.
especially all the music that I've been putting out, like the Christian music so far. It all mostly just talks about like my struggles and I've been through a lot of addictions and I've struggled with a lot of sin in my life and I've just overcome it. I'm writing about that and I'm writing about just wanting to be a light that shines for Jesus now, coming out of my secular industry. I hate saying secular, it just sounds so Christianese, like mainstream industry, coming out of the
Yeah.
mainstream industry into the Christian industry. I've written about that. So everything's really personal. Everything's personal.
And you kind of like talked about this, but you said that like you've had trials and stuff, and it reminds me like something I heard one time was like, without doubt, you can't have strong enough like faith. Like you need to have like some doubt and like overcome that doubt to have strong faith. So I was wondering how you've like navigated your seasons of spiritual uncertainty.
Yeah, like even in weaknesses, like God takes our weaknesses, like when we are weak, he makes us strong. So like when we are doubting, yeah, he takes the doubt and he turns it into something beautiful. I mean, for sure, there's been lots of doubt there. Like, God, am I living in your will? Am I living in the calling that you have for my life? Really, I mean, I mean, I'll say this, when I was living in my season of sin, when sin was really prevailing in my life, like I still believed in God. I never had any spiritual uncertainty there. And my spiritual weapon was prayer. I would be addicted to drugs, but at the end of the night, I would still look in the mirror. I would say, God, like I hate myself right now. Like I hate what I'm doing, but I would still be talking with him, right? So I think like just bringing it back to prayer, like that is that has always helped me navigate the seasons in my life, like where there's spiritual uncertainty. If I feel like I'm not living right, it's just I've always resorted back to prayer, just calling out to God. He always hears us. He always hears us. And it took a long time. I was using drugs for a long time, but in the end, it was a big process. God teaches us things throughout our lives. We go through things for a reason, and you just got to keep praying. That's my
Mhm.
advice.
And I'm sure everyone is so grateful that you're so open about your trials because I've definitely seen that God uses us and our trials to help others uplift and overcome theirs.
Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
that's so cool that you're able to do that. Like obviously you're doing music about that, but I feel like everyone's spiritual journey is just as important, to figure out, where am I with God? What kind of vices am I doing to cope with things, And so it's cool to see that you're able to, at least you were saying, to recognize that. And then now you're like making music to inspire hundreds and thousands of people. Now you're leading these church organizations and you're uplifting people that way. So
Mhm.
what's something you wish more people knew, when you're teaching or singing on the stage? Like what's something you really want to tell to your listeners and people in your church, people who don't care about music or don't care about God? Like what's just something you're passionate about saying and expressing to them?
The most like thing that I've been passionate about is just like finding out what God's will is for my life and living in it. That's like a prayer that I pray every morning. It's like, God, what do you want me to do today? Like, lead me, like, guide me. What is your will? Because that's really what he wants us to do when we're on this earth. He wants us to be in tune with him and asking him, what does he want us to do? And then another thing is like find out what your like giftings are. Mine's music, beyond shadow of a doubt. But like, are you a teacher? Do you have the gift of prophecy or teaching or giving or like there's gifts that God has given us all, right? You just figure out what your gifts are and just try and use it for him and help others.
That's amazing. So to kind of wrap this up, do you have a song that feels most personal to you, and why would you say that?
Well, I mean, I don't really have one particular one. Like I said, I write every song is about me and my struggles. So like you'll just have to go listen to all of them. Sorry.
That's a good way to put it. Guys, to the listeners, listen to all of his music, and then you guys get to choose which one's the best one.
Yes.
Speaking of that, do you have any new projects, new songs that you're excited to release?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I just released a week ago Friday. It's called Jesus Be the Center. It's just kind of talking about asking God, like I just told you guys, like Jesus be the center of my life. I want your will for my life. Be the center of it all. Be the center of my marriage, my friendships, my parenthood, my business, my music, everything. Jesus be the center. So that's what the song is about. And I have some other projects coming out. Like I said, I've just turned a few songs, my mainstream songs into Christian songs. So I'm really excited to release those next over the course of the year. So yeah, stay
Sweet.
tuned. Follow me on my socials and you'll get to hear them all first.
Thank you for listening. If you like this episode, share it with your friends and family, and follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Take a Leap Pod. I'm Neftali Rodriguez, and our production team includes James Sturdivant, Aaliyah Alexander, Heidi Hansen, and Ocean Marshall.